Jonas Kane was no longer the man he used to be. After years of flying through the most dangerous parts of the galaxy, he had settled into a quiet life on Earth. He was a living legend, once the top pilot in Earth's military, known for his skill, courage, and unmatched ability to survive impossible missions. Now he spent his days in a small, cozy cabin just outside the bustling city, enjoying the peace he had earned. He spent his mornings with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over the hills. His mind often wandered back to the days of intense battles, space chases, and narrow escapes. Those memories were a part of him, but they were behind him now. The world had moved on, and so had he. There were no more missions, no more galactic emergencies. He had done his part, and Earth was safe. But that morning, as the first rays of sunlight hit the mountains, something was different. The calm was broken by a soft beep from the corner of the room. Jonas looked over at his communications terminal. It wasn't the usual signals he ignored. This one was a direct distress call. His hand hesitated for a moment before he stood up and walked over to the console. A message appeared on the screen, blinking red with urgency. It wasn't just any message. It was from deep space. Jonas rubbed his eyes, trying to focus. The message was garbled, with static interrupting every few words, but he could still make out the most important part. It was a distress call from an alien crew, stranded in uncharted space. The transmission came from a ship called the Nara's Hope, an unknown species that had been navigating the outskirts of Earth's galaxy. As the message continued, Jonas heard the voice of a woman, strained and desperate. "This is Captain Lyra of the Nara's Hope. We are stranded in unknown territory. Our engines are failing and we are surrounded by an asteroid field. Our systems are critical. We request immediate assistance. Please, we have no time." Jonas leaned in closer to the screen, frowning. The words were simple, but the panic in the captain's voice was clear. He had heard distress calls before, but something about this one made him pause. There was an urgency in her tone that felt real. The silence that followed made it clear that no one else had answered. For a moment, Jonas stood still. He had spent so many years flying, so many years saving people, that he thought he was done. His days of adventure were over. But now, here it was again, a chance to do something no one else could. The thought of saving an alien crew was crazy, but his instincts kicked in. He couldn't ignore it. He had to help. Jonas sat back down, pulling up the details of the transmission. The coordinates were deep in space, farther than any human ship had traveled in years. The journey would take days, and the dangers would be great. Asteroid fields, rogue ships, and who knew what else stood between him and the alien crew. But Jonas didn't hesitate. He had made it through worse before. Much worse. He tapped a few buttons on the console, accessing the file on the ship. The Nara's Hope was an alien starship with a design Jonas had never seen before. Sleek and shining, it was clearly more advanced than any human vessel, but its systems were failing. The transmission had been sent from a location deep within an uncharted asteroid belt, far from any known trade routes or military patrols. Jonas knew he had to act quickly. The longer he waited, the more danger the alien crew would be in. His mind raced as he prepared for the journey. He pulled up schematics of his own ship, the Phoenix, a sleek, well-maintained craft that had once served as a top military fighter. Now it was his personal vessel, equipped for long-distance travel and equipped with the best tech Earth could offer. The Phoenix wasn't just any ship. It had been built for speed and agility, capable of taking on the most dangerous space missions. With its advanced engines, cutting-edge weapons, and reinforced shields, it was more than enough to handle the unknown. It was exactly what he needed to get to the Nara's Hope in time. Jonas quickly worked through the preparations, checking the systems, double-checking the fuel reserves, and loading up the necessary supplies. As he walked around the ship, memories flooded back to him. This was what he had done for most of his life, saving people, flying through impossible odds, and always coming out on top. It felt strange to be doing it again, but deep down, he knew he had no choice. He ran through the ship's pre-flight checklist, his mind focused on the task at hand. He was ready. No more hesitation. The engines of the Phoenix roared to life, and Jonas took off into the sky, heading for the unknown. The Earth's atmosphere fell away behind him, and the blackness of space stretched out before him. As he cruised through the void, his mind raced with questions. Who were these aliens? What kind of technology did they have? Why were they so far from any known galaxy? And most importantly, why had they called for his help? Jonas didn't have answers to these questions, but he knew one thing for sure. He had been chosen for a reason. It wasn't just a coincidence that this message had come to him. No, this was something bigger. He could feel it in his bones. The journey was long, but Jonas never wavered. He piloted the Phoenix with precision, steering it through asteroid fields and avoiding dangerous gravitational anomalies. As the days passed, the ship's artificial intelligence, Helix, kept him informed about his course and any potential threats in the vicinity. Jonas wasn't used to having a machine talk to him so much, but Helix had become a trusted companion during his past missions, and he knew he could count on it again. The deep silence of space surrounded him, broken only by the hum of the engines and the occasional beeping of systems. As the stars flew by, Jonas couldn't help but think about the crew he was racing to save. They were out there, alone, in a dangerous part of space. He didn't know what kind of creatures they were, but he knew they needed him. Jonas thought back to the earlier moments of his career, when he had first learned what it meant to be a pilot. Back then, it was about the thrill of the chase, the rush of flying faster than anyone else. But over time, he had learned that it was more than that. It was about making a difference. It was about being there when others couldn't. That's why he was doing this. Not for fame, not for glory. He was doing this because he knew he could help. He had done it before, and he would do it again. The stars in front of him seemed to stretch on forever, but Jonas pushed forward. He could feel the weight of the mission on his shoulders, but he knew it was his responsibility to see it through. As the days passed, he knew the alien crew was counting on him, and he would get there, no matter what. The final stretch of the journey was coming into view, and Jonas could feel his heart rate quicken. The coordinates were close. The asteroid belt loomed ahead, a dangerous obstacle. Jonas adjusted the controls, preparing for the treacherous path that lay ahead. As he neared the asteroid field, Jonas couldn't help but wonder what awaited him. Would the alien crew be thankful for his help? Would they accept him or see him as an outsider? He didn't know, but he did know one thing. He had come to save them, and that was exactly what he intended to do. With steady hands and a focused mind, Jonas flew the Phoenix toward the unknown, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. The stars outside Jonas Kane's ship, the Phoenix, stretched on endlessly, far beyond the reach of any human mission. He sat in the cockpit, hands steady on the controls, eyes focused on the swirling mass of space in front of him. The alien ship, the Nara's Hope, was still out there, somewhere in the uncharted void. But Jonas was getting closer by the hour. As the hours passed, the long, lonely journey weighed heavily on Jonas's shoulders. His life had always been about moving fast, reacting quickly. Space, however, had a way of making time feel endless. The silence around him was constant, broken only by the low hum of the ship's systems. Even Helix, the ship's AI, kept quiet, providing only the essential updates. Jonas didn't mind. He liked the quiet. It helped him think. He was no stranger to deep space, but this journey felt different. It wasn't just another mission. The stakes were higher. There were lives at risk. Lives depending on him to get there in time. The alien crew had sent out a cry for help, and Jonas was the only one who could answer. The coordinates to the Nara's Hope were far beyond anything the humans had explored, even with their advanced technology. Jonas had no idea what lay ahead, There was no map to guide him through the unknown, no military force waiting to back him up. It was just him and his ship, and he had to rely on his instincts and years of experience to get him through. As he navigated through the darkness, Jonas couldn't help but wonder about the crew he was racing to save. Who were they? What kind of beings were they? The transmission had come through in a language he didn't recognize, but the desperation in the captain's voice had made the message clear. They needed help, and fast. The silence of space had always been both comforting and eerie to Jonas. There were no distractions, no outside noise to pull his attention away from the task at hand. He could focus entirely on the mission, on getting to the alien crew, on saving them. The emptiness of space gave him clarity, but also a constant sense of urgency. Suddenly, the quiet hum of the ship's systems was interrupted by a soft beep. Jonas glanced at the console. A warning signal flashed in front of him. "Asteroid field ahead. Estimated time to collision, 3 minutes," the voice of Helix said calmly. Jonas had already suspected it. Space was full of dangers, and this part of the galaxy was known for its asteroid belts. But it didn't make it any easier to face. Jonas quickly assessed the situation. The asteroid field was dense, filled with large, irregular rocks, each one big enough to destroy his ship if he wasn't careful. The area was well known for its unpredictable movements, with asteroids shifting positions and even colliding with each other. It was a difficult place to navigate, but Jonas had dealt with worse. He had to. With a steady hand, he adjusted the ship's course. The Phoenix was a fast ship, built for agility and speed, but even it couldn't outrun an asteroid field. Jonas would need to weave through it, using the ship's advanced navigation systems and his experience to avoid the debris. It was going to be tight, but Jonas knew he could do it. "Helix, adjust power to engines." "I need full thrust," Jonas said, his voice steady but urgent. The AI responded instantly, powering up the engines to full capacity. Jonas felt the shift in pressure as the Phoenix surged forward. "Calculating optimal path through the asteroid field," Helix responded, its calm tone a stark contrast to the rapid decisions Jonas had to make. Jonas trusted Helix, but he knew the ship's AI wasn't going to be able to get him through this without a little help from him. The first asteroid appeared on the right side of the ship, and Jonas took a deep breath. His hands danced across the controls, nudging the ship to the left just as the rock whizzed by. The Phoenix dodged it, but just barely. Jonas didn't have time to celebrate. Another asteroid loomed large ahead of him. He adjusted the angle, pushing the Phoenix up and to the right. The ship's thrusters fired in sync with his movements, and they barely cleared the asteroid's path. Jonas couldn't afford to make a single mistake. If he missed by even a few inches, the impact would tear through the hull and end the mission, and his life, instantly. Minutes passed, but each one felt like an eternity. Jonas dodged asteroid after asteroid, using the ship's advanced systems to keep track of the debris as they shifted and moved in real time. It was like a dance, each maneuver calculated and precise, yet unpredictable at the same time. He couldn't let his guard down, not for a second. A particularly large asteroid appeared ahead, and Jonas knew he didn't have time to avoid it. There was only one option. He had to go through it. He set the Phoenix on a direct course, engaging the ship's shields to full strength. The shields flickered to life, their blue glow lighting up the cockpit for a brief moment. Jonas braced himself for the impact. The asteroid hit with a jolt that rattled the entire ship, but the shields held strong. Jonas felt the shock wave ripple through the vessel, but the Phoenix held together. The ship veered slightly, but Jonas quickly regained control, steering it back on course. They had made it through, but just barely. Jonas let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The asteroid field was behind him now, but there was no time to relax. The alien ship, the Nara's Hope, was still waiting for him. They were running out of time. "Helix, any updates on the ship's position?" Jonas asked, his voice focused. "Current position? 200 miles from target, approaching the outer rim of the asteroid field." Estimated time of arrival, 15 minutes, the AI responded. Jonas nodded, adjusting the ship's course once again. They were close. As they neared the coordinates, Jonas couldn't help but feel a growing sense of anticipation. He was almost there. The unknown alien crew was waiting for him, and he was about to meet them for the first time. What would they be like? Would they be hostile? Or would they be grateful for his help? Jonas didn't know, but he was ready for whatever came next. Suddenly, a loud beep interrupted his thoughts. It was another warning from Helix. Energy readings detected. Unknown source. Approximate location. Dead ahead. Jonas's heart skipped a beat. He had been so focused on the asteroid field that he hadn't expected this. His hand hovered over the controls as he scanned the readings. The energy signature was unlike anything he had encountered before. It wasn't a weapon, but it was powerful, something far beyond human technology. "Helix, give me a full scan. What is that?" Jonas asked, his voice tight with concern. The AI processed the data quickly, but the answer it gave was not what Jonas had expected. Unknown. Energy signature matches no known species or technology. Jonas's mind raced. Was it a trap? Was someone else out there waiting for him? He had no way of knowing. The only thing he could do was proceed with caution. "Helix, slow the ship." "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Jonas ordered. As the Phoenix slowed down, Jonas watched the energy readings closely. The source was drawing nearer, but still out of view. He gripped the controls tightly, knowing he had to be ready for anything. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one stretching longer than the last. Jonas knew the aliens were out there, waiting for him. But now, there was a new unknown in the distance. Whatever it was, it could change everything. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. He was about to enter a world of mysteries far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The energy signature grew stronger as Jonas approached the coordinates for the Nara's Hope. He could feel the tension building in the pit of his stomach. Whatever was out there was not something he had ever encountered before. His hands tightened on the controls as the ship neared the unknown energy source. The silence around him felt suffocating, broken only by the steady hum of the Phoenix's engines. "Helix, any updates on that energy signature?" Jonas asked, his voice tight with concentration. The AI responded, calm and methodical as always. "Energy source is consistent. Distance is approximately 5 kilometers. Unknown classification. Proceed with caution." Jonas's grip on the controls tightened even more. He was getting closer, but there was still no sign of the Nara's Hope, just the eerie energy reading ahead, pulsing through the void like a warning. The Phoenix slipped through the final layers of asteroid debris, and ahead, Jonas finally saw it, the alien ship. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The Nara's Hope floated silently in space, its hull battered and scorched, as if it had been through hell. The starboard side was heavily damaged, a large gaping hole where some sort of explosion had torn through the ship. It drifted, listing to one side, slowly spinning. The flicker of emergency lights dotted its surface, but there was no movement, no sign of life. Jonas's heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't believe it. He had made it. He had arrived just in time, but the sight before him made it clear that the crew was in deep trouble. The alien ship was barely holding together. He had to act fast. "Helix, link up with their communication systems." "Let's see if we can get through," Jonas said, his voice steady despite the tension that gripped him. Helix responded promptly. "Link established. Communication line is open." Jonas took a deep breath. He had to do this right. He didn't know what kind of people the aliens were, or even if they were hostile. But he couldn't afford to waste time. He keyed in the communication frequency and spoke into the mic. "This is Jonas Kane, the human pilot from Earth. I've come to help. Please respond. The static on the line buzzed for a moment before the voice of Captain Lyra came through. Her voice was strained, her tone weak, but there was still a hint of strength in her words. Jonas Kane, you made it. We've been waiting for you.
Our engines are failing. Life support systems are barely functioning.
Please help us. Jonas's heart sank. The desperation in her voice was unmistakable. This was worse than he had imagined. The alien ship was falling apart, and the crew was in danger. There was no time to waste. Don't worry, Captain. I'm coming aboard. Prepare for docking, Jonas said, keeping his tone calm despite the urgency he felt. He adjusted the Phoenix's course, aligning it with the Nara's Hope. The damage to the alien ship made the docking process complicated. Jonas had to be precise. One wrong move, and both ships could collide. Or worse, he could damage the alien vessel beyond repair. Jonas carefully inched the Phoenix closer, using the ship's maneuvering thrusters to guide it with delicate precision. The lights on the alien ship flickered in response, but there was no sign of movement. Jonas held his breath as he lined up the ships, inch by inch. The Phoenix's hull came within a few feet of the damaged ship, and the magnetic docking clamps activated. The connection was made, but it was clear that the alien ship had suffered significant damage. The magnetic field wasn't as strong as it should have been. If the ship shifted too much, the connection could break. Jonas secured the Phoenix in place and immediately activated the airlock. The door opened with a hiss, and he stepped out into the darkened corridor of the alien ship. The faint lights of the Nara's Hope flickered above him as he made his way through the dark, unfamiliar hallways. The ship felt empty, cold, like it was slowly dying. He didn't know what he would find, but he pushed forward. He had to help them. As he moved deeper into the ship, he noticed the damage was worse than he thought. The walls were scorched, the floors cracked, and debris littered the halls. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and something else. Something faintly metallic, like blood. Jonas swallowed hard, trying not to think about it. He had to keep going. The ship was eerily silent, except for the distant sounds of the alien crew moving in the shadows. It wasn't until he reached the main command center that he found them. The crew of the Nara's Hope was gathered in the dimly lit room. There were about a dozen of them, humanoid in shape but with distinct features. Long, thin limbs, silvery skin that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dark, and eyes that glowed with a soft, pale light. They looked at him as he entered, their faces a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Some were standing, others sitting. All of them looked exhausted and wounded, their bodies battered from the impact of the asteroid field. But it was their leader, Captain Lyra, who caught Jonas's attention. She was seated in the center, her posture regal despite the exhaustion that weighed on her. Her skin was a deep violet, her hair silver white, and her eyes shone with an intelligence and authority that commanded respect. She looked like someone who had seen too much too quickly, and yet had never lost her composure. She looked at Jonas, her gaze intense and unwavering. "You came," she said, her voice a bit stronger now. "You."
"Are human?"
Jonas nodded.
"Yes, Captain. I'm here to help."
"We need to get you out of here." Lyra stood slowly, her movements deliberate despite the weakness in her limbs. "We are in your debt, human, but we are not out of danger yet. The ship's power core is failing. If it reaches critical levels, it will explode, taking us all with it."
"You must help us."
Jonas's heart pounded in his chest. He had been expecting trouble, but this was far worse than he could have imagined. The power core of the ship was failing, and if it exploded, it would destroy everything in its path. There was no time to waste. "Tell me what I need to do," Jonas said, his voice steady, though his mind raced. Lyra motioned to the console in front of her, and Jonas moved toward it. The console was damaged, but it still functioned. The screens flickered, displaying the status of the ship's core. The numbers were dangerously low. He could see the core's energy levels dropping fast. They were running out of time. "Can you fix it?" Lyra asked. Jonas scanned the display, his mind working quickly. The core was damaged, but it wasn't beyond repair. If he could access the main systems and reroute the power, he might be able to stabilize it long enough to get them to safety. But it would be risky. He didn't know the alien technology well, and the ship was already falling apart. There were too many unknowns. "I can try," Jonas said, his voice low but confident. "I just need you to buy me some time." Lyra nodded. "We will fight for you, human, whatever it takes." Jonas turned back to the console and began working, his mind racing as he tapped into the alien systems. He was good with technology, but this was like nothing he had ever seen before. The ship's systems were completely different from Earth's, and every move he made felt like walking a tightrope. But he couldn't fail them. He wouldn't. The clock was ticking down, and Jonas knew that if he didn't act fast, it would be too late. The alien crew was depending on him, and in that moment, Jonas realized that this mission was far more than a rescue. It was a test of everything he had ever learned as a pilot, a test of his courage, his skill, and his humanity. The countdown to disaster had begun, and Jonas was the only one who could stop it. Jonas's fingers moved quickly over the alien console, his mind racing. The power core was dangerously close to reaching critical levels. Every second counted. He could feel the weight of the task pressing down on him, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had been through impossible situations before, and this was no different. His hands steadied as he made the final adjustments to the ship's systems, trying to stabilize the power flow. "Helix, reroute all available power to the core," Jonas ordered, his voice steady but urgent. Helix responded immediately, rerouting power now. Core stability, 47%. Energy distribution, rebalanced. The numbers on the console flickered as the power levels slowly began to rise. Jonas's heart pounded in his chest. It was working, but just barely. The core was still unstable, but he had bought them some time. He could hear the hum of the ship's systems as they tried to stabilize, the lights flickering back to life in some parts of the ship. The emergency sirens had quieted for now, but the danger was far from over. He turned to Captain Lyra, who was watching him closely. Her face was filled with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "That should buy us a few hours," Jonas said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "We still need to get you out of here. Do you have a plan for that?" Lyra nodded, her expression hardening as she looked at the other crew members. "We have a backup escape vessel, but it is in the lower bay, heavily damaged. It will take all of us working together to get it functional. I will lead the way." Jonas nodded. The alien ship was in bad shape, but it seemed like they still had a chance. The crew began to move toward the lower levels of the ship, and Jonas followed close behind, keeping an eye on the flickering lights and the unstable systems. As they moved deeper into the ship, the damage became more apparent. Some areas were nearly impassable, with large sections of the walls collapsed or sealed off. The floor was uneven, and debris cluttered the halls. The crew worked quickly, moving past the obstacles with a sense of urgency. Jonas kept close, his mind working through the next steps. The escape vessel was their only chance, but the damage to the Nara's Hope made it unclear if they would even be able to get to it in time. Every corridor they passed was filled with more signs of damage, sparks flying from exposed wires, walls that had been scorched by the impact of the asteroid field. The alien ship was falling apart, and Jonas knew that if they didn't act fast, it would be too late. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the lower bay. The escape vessel was nestled in the corner, its once pristine surface now battered and dented. It was a small, sleek craft, far more advanced than any human ship Jonas had ever seen. But it was clear that it had taken a beating. One of the engines was completely destroyed, and the other was barely functioning. Lyra approached the vessel, her eyes scanning the damage. "It's going to be difficult, but we can still make it work. We need to reroute the remaining power and seal the breaches in the hull. Jonas stepped forward, taking in the situation. I can help. I know enough about ships to get us started, but we'll need to move fast. The crew members moved to work, their alien hands moving with practiced precision as they began the repairs. Jonas did his part, offering whatever help he could. The hours passed quickly as they worked together, fixing the damage and rerouting power to the escape vessel's engines. Jonas watched as Lyra worked alongside her crew, her leadership clear even in the midst of the chaos. She was a natural leader, commanding respect from her people without saying a word. It was easy to see why they had trusted her to lead them through such a dangerous mission. As the final adjustments were made, Lyra turned to Jonas.
We are ready,
She said, her voice steady.
Thank you for everything.
Without you, we would not have survived. Jonas gave her a small nod. We're not out yet. Let's get moving. They climbed into the escape vessel, the crew members taking their places. Jonas sat in the cockpit, his hands moving over the controls as he powered up the engines. The ship hummed to life, the sound of the engines vibrating through the hull. Jonas held his breath for a moment, checking the systems one last time. Everything seemed to be holding together, but they couldn't afford any mistakes. Helix, initiate the launch sequence, Jonas said, his voice calm but firm. The AI responded immediately. Launch sequence initiated. All systems are go. The escape vessel lurched forward, leaving the damaged Nara's Hope behind. Jonas maneuvered the ship carefully, his focus entirely on getting them clear of the dying vessel. The ship shook as they passed through the debris field, the rocks and fragments of the broken starship flying past them. It was a tight fit, but Jonas skillfully navigated through the wreckage. As they cleared the debris field and entered open space, Jonas allowed himself a moment of relief. They were out of immediate danger, but they weren't home free yet. The alien crew was safe for now, but they still had to make it back to Earth. Lyra stood beside him in the cockpit, watching the stars ahead. We owe you our lives, human, she said, her voice quiet but sincere. I cannot thank you enough. Jonas shrugged, his expression softening. It wasn't just me. It was all of us. You've got a strong crew, she smiled slightly, her violet eyes glowing in the dim light of a cockpit. It's rare for someone like you to understand. Not many would have helped us, especially without knowing who we are. Jonas thought about that for a moment. He had been raised to help others, no matter the cost. It didn't matter who or what they were. If someone needed help, he would give it. I've seen a lot of different things in my time, he said slowly. And no matter how far we travel or what we encounter, it all comes down to one thing: humanity. We all want the same thing in the end. Lyra nodded, her gaze distant. Perhaps, but not all beings share that belief. Jonas glanced at her. Maybe not, but that's why we're here, to show others what it means to be human. The stars stretched out before them, the blackness of space filled with possibilities. For the first time in what felt like a long while, Jonas felt the weight of the journey lighten. They had made it. The crew of the Nara's Hope was safe, and they had a chance to rebuild. The alliance between Earth and the alien species was just beginning, and who knew where it would lead. But one thing was certain: humanity had made a new friend in the galaxy, and with it, a new understanding of what it meant to be truly united. As the escape vessel drifted through the quiet emptiness of space, Jonas set his course for Earth. The journey was long, but it was one he was ready for. And this time, he wasn't flying alone.